SKOL Vikings, let's win this game.
Vikings fan, the mood in Minnesota today is something else. The starter went down. The backup came straight from the end of the bench into the fire. People are already talking about a full shakeup at the position. There is a veteran with nearly 48,000 passing yards being talked about as practically a lock to join this team. And there was also a heavy message delivered to the fan base. Yes to you. Stay with me all the way through because that final piece of news really hurts. But before we dive into every detail of this Minnesota mess, let me ask you for one thing. Subscribe to the channel. It is free and it helps a lot to keep this bleacher side voice alive. Hit the like button because that is what makes YouTube push these stories out to other fans. And leave a comment because your opinion is really important. Let me be very clear with you. The J.J. McCarthy situation is heavy. He suffered a concussion in Green Bay, he is out against Seattle, and it feels like the season is skidding out for good. This is a team sitting at 4 wins and 7 losses with a stalled offense and confidence on the floor, right when everyone needed to find out whether he truly is the franchise quarterback. To be honest with you, the injury became a forced pause in a movie that was already tough to watch. In 6 games, he has thrown an interception in every single one. That is 10 in total, plus 5 fumbles and only 54.1% of his passes completed. Too many high balls, late reads, messy progressions. On some snaps, he freezes and holds the ball too long. On others, he lets it go completely off target. Right now, his game does not inspire much confidence, as painful as that is to admit. Sure, you can point out that Peyton Manning, Troy Aikman, and even Josh Allen started out rocky. The difference here is that the combination is explosive. A raw quarterback, an offensive line leaking pressure, and a team that just lost 23-6 to the Packers without a real pulse. Even with a relatively close score, it felt like a loss from the start. Vikings Nation feels that in the gut. It is not drama, it is years of wear and tear. At the same time, you cannot just throw the kid under the bus and pretend it is over. There is still time in 2025 to fix his footwork, his reads, and his timing with Justin Jefferson and the rest of the offense. The front office pushed its chips in on him. They are not going to walk away after 6 starts. But while he is stuck in the protocol, the question is inevitable. Can anyone else squeeze more out of what little this offense is still offering? That is a pure bleacher view question. No polished podium speech. And that is where Max Brosmer comes in. He went undrafted, but he has real credibility in Minnesota after what he did in college. Calm, smart, now heading into his first start, and it comes in Seattle. Maximum hostility, the 12th man screaming in his ear, an aggressive defense that loves to blitz. Either he sinks fast, or he earns instant respect in the locker room and in the stands. And I will admit it, I am really curious to see what he delivers. The recent history in Seattle is not encouraging. Early in the season, Baker Mayfield threw for 370 yards there. After that game, the defense adjusted and did not allow anyone else to top 232 passing yards. Last week, whatever Tennessee put up came in garbage time. This is nowhere near a dream setting for a debut, especially behind an offensive line that already struggles to protect McCarthy. Brosmer has only 8 pass attempts in the NFL with 5 completions. That is basically no sample size at all. Nobody knows how he will react when the blitz comes free and the stadium is shaking on 3rd down. If he protects the football, moves the chains, and finds Jefferson with any consistency, the conversation in Minnesota is going to heat up in a hurry. Drop a comment if you agree. Because this game against the Seahawks is not just a random date in a weird season, it is a quiet test for McCarthy, even without him on the field. If Brosmer struggles, the front office has ammo to double down on the JJ project. If Brosmer plays well, the questions about the future of the position will be shouted even louder, right along with the pressure on Kevin O'Connell. Keep that in mind because the next part goes straight at that future. You know what could turn into a full-blown drama in Minnesota really fast. All this expectation being loaded onto Max Brosmer. The frustration with J.J. McCarthy is already heavy. The team sits at 4 wins and 7 losses, the offense is bogged down, and suddenly the undrafted rookie becomes the name a lot of people want to see on the field. It is that mix of hope and fear that the Purple Faithful knows all too well. To be honest with you, it is not empty hype. With the Gophers, he threw for more than 2,800 yards, completed more than 66% of his passes, tossed 18 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. And that came after productive years at New Hampshire. He threw far more often than McCarthy in college. He saw more defensive looks. He faced pressure from all angles. That matters a lot when you get to the NFL and have to decide in about 2 seconds. Michael Rand from the Star Tribune said that if Brosmer delivers a genuinely strong game in Seattle, people will be ready to build a statue for him. And that is not really an exaggeration. This fan base is starving for a quarterback who at least does not drag the team down. He does not even need to be a superstar. Just imagine the former Gopher walking into Lumen Field, handling the Seahawks' pressure, protecting the football, and walking out with a win. Honestly, it would be a blast to see that reaction. There is also a historical angle here. A Gophers quarterback becoming a true established starter in the NFL is almost urban legend territory. The names show up more for trivia than for actual impact. If Brosmer catches fire, that connection with the university becomes fuel. Fans who mostly just complain from the couch start following practices, pressers, everything, just to see if he really is the guy. That is how the stories fans never forget get written. But here comes the tricky part. The franchise spent the 10th overall pick on McCarthy. It let Kirk Cousins walk. It watched Sam Darnold leave after a 14-3 year in 2024 and doubled down on the JJ project. If Brosmer steps in, plays loose, protects the ball, and makes the offense look more organized in one single game, the debate about the future of the position explodes. And here, you are hearing that the way the fans are thinking it, not the way a team executive would spin it at a press conference. Rand himself said it. If Brosmer plays well, the Vikings end up with a real dilemma. It is not a final verdict against McCarthy. The heavy investment is still in him. But it opens the door to a lot of serious closed-door conversations, especially because Brosmer's skill set matches what Kevin O'Connell likes. Quick processing, anticipation, a strong intermediate passing game, an offense that stays on script. You can picture the head coach watching tape and thinking, okay, this is how my system is supposed to look. If that does not become a talking point all week long, I do not recognize this fan base. When you add it all up, this matchup with the Seahawks could be the starting point of a mini quarterback controversy if Brosmer performs. Fans are going to compare every snap and every decision between the two. That is just how football is lived in Minnesota. Drop a comment if you agree, because this debate is not going away. And pay attention, because next up is what the Vikings can realistically do on the market if this position keeps shaking. When you look ahead past all this chaos in 2025, it is enough to give you chills. Albert Breer has already said the Vikings are expected to bring in at least one more starting caliber quarterback next offseason. That changes the landscape in a big way. The front office knows it cannot go into 2026 armed only with hope and nice press conferences, especially with the defense playing well and this much offensive talent being wasted. Defend the North deserves something better than preying on third down. To be honest with you, the salary cap picture is a real knot. The team is projecting a serious hole for 2026, loaded with big contracts and very little flexibility for a superstar type of move. That old idea of just going out and getting a first-tier quarterback basically falls apart. Daniel Jones has rebuilt his career in Indianapolis, but Minnesota let him walk, and now the Colts are not likely to let him go. And, frankly, paying big money again for a quarterback after everything that happened with Cousins would be a major risk. Drafting another quarterback high also does not look like the move right now. The team has 8 picks, but 5 of them are late from the 5th round on, with 3 in the 7th. That is not the kind of capital you use to instantly flip the most important position on the roster. Those are pieces you develop slowly at the bottom of the depth chart, not players you drop in to replace the investment you already made in McCarthy. Just imagine the meltdown if they tried that now. That is where the trusted veteran profile comes in. Joe Flacco pops up as that older quarterback who has seen everything. More than 48,000 passing yards in his career, 272 touchdowns, a championship, all the experience you could want. He is not a star at this stage, of course, but when he lands on a roster that is solid around him, the offense usually works. In 2023, he took the Browns to the playoffs. In 2025, he started out getting hammered behind a brutal offensive line in Cleveland. When he moved to Cincinnati, the offense just exploded in yards and points, even though the team kept losing because of the defense. The point is that he has become exactly that type of option, a veteran on a reasonable deal with a short contract who can hold things down if the starter struggles or gets hurt. For a Vikings team with a strong defense, a patched-up line, and top-tier playmakers, someone like Flacco looks a lot like an insurance policy. He would not be the future. He would be the emergency parachute if McCarthy keeps stumbling with his reads and accuracy. And here you are hearing that the way fans run the numbers, mixing heart and cap math. At the same time, the expectation is still that McCarthy comes back as the favorite in 2026. If he stays healthy and shows any real progress in the rest of this season, the job is his on paper. The veteran walks in as the adult backup in the room, not as the savior. Drop a comment if you agree, because I know a lot of people already want to blow it all up. And get ready, because in the next segment, I am going straight at the big question. Is it already time to label JJ a bust, or are we just rushing to judgment out of pure desperation? There is something in this whole JJ McCarthy story that really hits me. People are treating the kid like a lost cause after only 6 bad games on a completely disorganized team. The reality is that the 2025 Vikings are a mess. The offense has no rhythm, the line gives up pressure constantly, the record is 4 wins and 7 losses, and it feels like any mistake turns into an avalanche. That is not an easy environment to develop any quarterback, and that goes double for a guy who lost an entire year to a knee injury. To be honest with you, it is fair to be angry about the high throws, the stalled reads, and the string of interceptions. And at the same time, it is also fair to admit that it is too early for a final verdict. Against Chicago, there was that stretch when the run game clicked. He fired 2 nice throws and then, in the decisive moment, launched the ball over Jefferson's head like he was trying to hit the stands. In Green Bay, the first drive looked promising, and then the offense flatlined. They went into halftime down 10-3, and it felt like 30-0 because of the complete lack of belief. But the chaos is not only on him. The team that last year was scoring more than 25 points a game now fights just to get to 20. O'Connell and his staff keep defending McCarthy in front of microphones, but the play calling shows fear. A lot of conservative throws, very little confidence in letting the kid attack the middle of the field. The fans see that, remember all the years of frustration, and explode. I get it, because I have seen this movie with other jerseys and other purple numbers. The national coverage keeps hammering that contrast. Darnold thriving in Seattle, Daniel Jones reborn in Indianapolis, Drake May in the MVP conversation in New England. Meanwhile, here we are choking down a losing season and watching a top 10 pick stumble through his reads. That is exactly the kind of thing Vikings fans run through their heads all day long. And yes, it does look like the front office got everything wrong. But when you look at the blown-up cap, the guaranteed money, and the way the roster was built, you can see why they could not hold on to all of those quarterbacks at once. That brings us to the central point. Development takes time. The NFL constantly tries to turn everything into an instant verdict. McCarthy is still a project, not a finished product. He lost all of 2024 and entered 2025 with no rhythm and no solid line in front of him. He also carries the pressure of replacing years of stability from Cousins and that 14-3 run with Darnold. That is a lot of emotional weight for someone who is just starting to figure out pro-level defensive speed. Sometimes even I have to stop, look over the numbers again, and think, relax, Derek, 6 games do not define a career. Up in the stands, the conversation is always the same. Some people want everything blown up tomorrow, others preach patience, and the truth probably sits somewhere in between. It is still fair to criticize how he has played, but it is not honest to declare that he is finished. Drop a comment if you agree, and stick with me, because the next story brings a direct message to the fan base about all this anxiety around McCarthy and the future of the franchise. At this stage of the season, I completely understand the feeling of a collective nightmare heading into Seattle. You look at the schedule, remember that 23-6 loss in Green Bay. See Sam Darnold on the other sideline, and it feels like a script written just to test this fan base's patience. Then Mark Craig, a longtime voice for people who follow this team, steps in with a message. Calm the heck down. Easy to say, right? Take a breath. I am trying to. To be honest with you, he has a point. We are looking at JJ McCarthy as if 6 games were 3 full seasons. He has 929 passing yards, 6 touchdown passes, 10 interceptions, a completion rate of 54.1%, and a passer rating stuck in the 50s. That is bad, no doubt. It is frustrating, absolutely. But Craig does what very few are willing to do. He takes those numbers and puts them next to guys like Matthew Stafford and Peyton Manning at the start of their careers. And yes, their early stat lines were ugly too. He also reminds everyone about Drake May starting 2 wins and 4 losses with a completion rate under 60%, and Baker Mayfield struggling early on in Cleveland. Today, those names are talked about as solutions, not problems. The message is not that McCarthy will be a Hall of Famer, it is something else. You simply cannot declare the end of a quarterback based on such a small sample in a team this messy. And here you get that blended with the way Vikings fans see it and the perspective of someone who has covered this franchise for decades. On our side, it feels like an emotional Black Friday. The franchise moved on from years of huge numbers with Cousins, rode that 14-3 wave with Darnold in 2024, and suddenly crashed into an offense that struggles to score 20 points on a regular basis. Of course, people feel like they bought the wrong product, especially when they see Darnold thriving in Seattle, Jones reborn in Indianapolis, and McCarthy melting down with interception after interception. It really does feel like everyone else got it right except this team. Craig calls the fan base uber impatient, and that is where his message gets sharper. In his view, this is not the time to move on from McCarthy, not even if Max Brosmer steps in and lights it up in Seattle. The logic is straightforward. The team made a franchise-level decision around JJJ. It built the plan for the next few years on him. Changing course over half a dozen bad outings and one possible feel-good night from an undrafted rookie would be more about emotion than reason, as tempting as it might be in the heat of the moment. And it is very tempting, believe me. At the same time, his column throws cold water on the whole thing and tries to protect Brosmer too. The "sorry Max" line is basically a warning. As much as everyone loves the idea of a surprise hero, in this story, he is still the third quarterback in the credits. Drop a comment if you agree, because this is exactly the kind of debate that splits a fan base. And in the conclusion, I am going to pull all of this together and face head-on what this moment really says about the Vikings' future. In the end, everything comes back to the same point. This is a team with 4 wins and 7 losses trying to find itself between the collapse of J.J. McCarthy, the wild hope around Max Brosmer, the shadow of a veteran like Joe Flacco, and a city torn between patience and anger. The hard truth is that the Vikings still do not know who is really going to run this offense, but they do know they cannot keep wasting a strong defense. Either the turnaround starts now, or 2025 becomes nothing more than a warning sign for what has to change in 2026. Drop a comment, because this space belongs to everyone who lives the purple faithful. This team gets to us every single day. Stick around for the next video. Stay tuned. SKOL Vikings. Let's go.